So we are back here with the elusive mystical lens flare that we spent so long capturing earlier on today. Lens flare, like I mentioned earlier, is something that you're not always going to get it exactly right the way you want it. So today I wasn't super excited with the lens flare I was capturing. The sun was a little bit too high and the leaves weren't necessarily grown out enough where we were shooting to really be cutting the light the way that I wanted. So just remember that when you're capturing lens flare, there are a lot of different ways that you can utilize this tool. So even though I didn't capture the exact lens flare that I wanted, we did get a lot of different types of the way that the light did filter through the lens. So just remember that you might not get the exact one that you want, but keep playing around with it and you will eventually get something that is good to play with. So some of the ones I wanted to just go through here. So this is an example of a kind of lens flare that I really liked. This is where we were using the subject's actual body to kind of cut through the sunlight that was coming from behind her. And we are getting here this really nice kind of starlight effect, and then also getting this flare popping out over here. So I really loved the way that this one came out. I thought that was great. So again, using your subject's body to kind of cut through the light is a great way to use lens flare. Here's an example of an aperture that I think was a little bit too wide. I was probably on an f-stop, I would say 4.5, around there. That's when you're going to start to get it to blob a little bit more versus having this more clearly defined kind of starlight coming through. So remember that as you're choosing your lens flare settings, that you want to really be thinking about the aperture. The wider the aperture, the more light you're going to be letting in, and the smaller the aperture, the more you're going to be getting these kind of direct starlight points. So I'm just going to go through these different ones that we captured today. So here again, this is probably my smallest aperture that I used all day. I was probably somewhere around maybe an f16 or so. And you're getting these really, really pointed lights. Again, it's all just about aesthetic preference. Here we are again. This one is super, super nice, really beautiful the way that it's coming over her shoulder. Again, thinking about where you're placing your subject. This one coming over her shoulder versus this one more around her head. You're getting different qualities of light depending upon the way your subject is standing, but I love the way this one came out. This is super beautiful. And then with this one, this is having a whole nother effect I wasn't even necessarily going for, but I actually love how we're getting this really cool like blue coming across here, and then this rainbow light over here. So yeah, as you're going through your photos and working with lens flare specifically, know that if you're not capturing the exact idea that you're going for, that you're probably still getting some really magical notes there inside your frame. Light is, as much as it's something that we can play with, it's not necessarily something we can control. So get used to that as you're out there, outside, in one of your favorite places, maybe getting a little frustrated that you're not getting the perfect shot. That light is something that you have to play with and not think about exactly what it's going to look like, but just have more of an open mind about what your final subject or your final composition is going to look like. So again, this one has this really beautiful haze to it. And this one was way too dark. So there's definitely a tendency to get your subject too dark in order to get the lens flare. So you want to make sure as you're choosing your aperture points that you're thinking about how your subject is lit. You can get a really amazing lens flare if you go to a dark enough f-stop, but then you're going to lose your subject. So just be aware that you want to be lighting your subject as much as you also want to be capturing the light that's coming through. Again, similar with this one. Really beautiful lens flare, but it's not really a usable photograph. And again here, we'll just go through a couple more. I love just this little tiny flare we got over here was really nice. And then this one, again, more like broad strokes here. Instead of trying to capture a small, tiny point, we're getting these really big strokes coming across and getting a little bit of this nice lighting over here. So there's just so many different ways that you can capture the elusive lens flare and just be really ready to kind of meet the light where it's at. Try not to get frustrated by not getting your immediate outcome, and just be more open to the outcomes that you are getting, because you'll often capture something really beautiful that you weren't even intending to if you just keep an open mind. So I think for this one, I want to go ahead and edit this. I just really am drawn to the way the lights kind of starlighted out here, and I think this whole composition is really beautiful with Steffi's hands. I was lucky enough to have a model that I've worked with a lot. She brought some of her own props, so she actually brought this scarf we ended up using a lot. When you're working with your model, if you want to prompt them to bring some of their own props, I know we talked about some of the props that we wanted to bring in our bag, but it's fun if your friend or model brings along their own props that they have a personal connection to or feel kind of goes with their own aesthetic. It really creates a fun dynamic between the two of you to let them also have a little bit of creative freedom in the photographic process together. So we'll get started with this one. Again, you got to remember that you're editing kind of for two different exposures here. We've got this really light sky and then a little bit darker of a subject. So I'm going to start again like I did the last one with doing the shadows first. Just going to bring the shadows up on Steffi. I love seeing how that brightens her face. We're going to get these more tones in the eyes right here. And just really starting to see her face brighten up. I'm gonna go next to contrast. I don't want to make this one too contrasted just because I do like the softness of how this one is looking. When you bump up the contrast, I think that it gives your photographs a little bit more of like a harsh look or an edgy look. So you want to keep that in mind about what kind of vibe you're going with. For the photo, again, I really like to keep my photos super soft and natural, so I'll almost always keep the contrast pretty low and bring the clarity down. And then I'm gonna go back up here and bring our highlights down, needing a bigger mask here. Just loving watching the details come out, seeing more leaves as we bring this down. I think it's so fun when you're editing how you're really just unveiling the photograph. Sometimes when you look at things in camera, it can feel a little bit disheartening if it's not exactly the way that you thought it was going to look, and then you get it on screen here and it's just so exciting to start to see the different elements really start to come to life. I'm loving this. I feel like she just looks like she's on some magical adventure here. And I'm gonna go back up to these blues. I'm loving bringing these blues in, going to saturation and bringing these blues up and really seeing that fun blue pop in the background. And then also I think I'm gonna see what the green is gonna do to those leaves. Yeah, I love this extra color pop we're getting back there. I think it's really fun. Bring the exposure down just a little bit to bring some of the background in. Then gonna bring up the blacks. Want to make sure that my subject is really the main focus here. Tiny bit more contrast. And then gonna bring some luminance into the face like we did for the last one. See how we're getting a little bit of those highlights, just a little bit to just brighten the face. And this one might be a fun one to try to do a little adding some more colors like we were talking about before. Again, you can really just play around with these a lot. Like this might kind of be a cool vibe if you were going for a more yellow, warm tone. I'm gonna keep it pretty much where it was, right there. So just going back and forth to the original. So here's our original photograph. Really, really dark. Again, the colors are a lot more dull. And here we're just bringing a lot of life, I think, into the face here. And each photo tells a story. So I think that when you start working on the editing process, start thinking about how you're really bringing that story to life through the different colors that you're bringing out or the different highlights that you're bringing up. How is it all contributing to the overall story that you're telling? And just being aware of how these different kind of micro changes can really add a lot.